The Callisto Protocol is a third-person survival horror game developed by Striking Distance Studios. It's a game that's been compared to the likes of Resident Evil, The Evil Within, and Dead Space. Most comparisons come from Dead Space because the co-creator of the franchise, Glenn Schofield, was the director for it. And if I'm honest, I think that spelled disaster for this game before it even came out. Being a spiritual successor to Dead Space left some massive shoes to fill, and in my opinion, it was being a little unfair to this game. The devs attempted to curate a new IP, and I think they wanted to take advantage of the lack of big third-person survival horror games. Back then, there was no Silent Hill 2, there was no Alan Wake 2, The Evil Within hadn't been heard from since 2017, and no Resident Evil 4 remake. Now, there was the Dead Space remake coming a month after Callisto Protocol, so it wasn't going to be alone for long, and I think if the remake had come at a later time, maybe Callisto Protocol would have had a better reception by gamers. However, it's been a few years and it's finished with all of its updates and DLC, so let's go ahead and talk about the game. Since it's been out for a little bit, I will be going over the highlights from the story. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, now's the time to skip ahead to the gameplay section. The Callisto Protocol takes place on one of Jupiter's moons, Callisto, in the year 2320. You play as Jacob Lee as he and his partner Max Barrow make a final delivery to the maximum security Black Iron prison. After making said delivery, Jacob's ship crashes onto the moon, no thanks to resident terrorist Danny Nakamura. At the request of the prison's warden, Duncan Cole, they are both taken into the prison by the head of security, Captain Leon Ferris. Shortly after they are taken in, the prison erupts into chaos when the inmate starts transforming into these creatures called biophages. After getting out of his cell, Jacob then encounters Elias Porter, one of the prison's longest residents and someone who knows the ins and outs of the entire complex. He convinces Jacob to free him so they can both escape. They are temporarily separated, and during that separation, Jacob encounters Captain Ferris, and after a brief conversation, he sends him to his doom. Together again with Elias, they eventually meet up with Danny in an attempt to escape the prison, since she's the only one who's able to hack the prison system so they can get a ship and leave. Danny locks Jacob in a cell because she doesn't trust him and sends him to the sewers. Jacob is reunited with Elias again and is given a power armor suit, and is prepared to meet up with Danny, but like a damn stalker, Captain Ferris shows up having survived his ordeal and sends Jacob and Elias out into the freezing cold of the planet. This kills Elias and forces Jacob to meet up with Danny on his own. Their third meeting doesn't really go that well, but fourth time's the charm, right? They finally agree to a truce and they make their way over to the hangar where the last ship is just floating out there in orbit. Warden Cole then destroys it, and the ship comes crashing down onto the hangar, completely destroying it, sending Jacob and Danny down beneath the prison. I don't know how they survive falling from the top of the prison all the way to beneath the prison, but they do, and once they're up, they make the choice to go right back into Black Iron. Without a ship, they don't have any other option other than to figure out what's going on with the warden and the prison. You see, I said earlier Danny was a terrorist. Well, that's not really true. She's a part of a group called the Outer Way who were labeled as terrorists after a virus outbreak that occurred on Danny's home planet, Europa. The group figured out that the Black Iron prison and the United Jupiter Company were responsible for the attack, which is one of the reasons why she made her way onto Jacob's ship. The other reason is because Jacob was the delivery man behind the outbreak on Europa, which caused the death of Danny's sister, and she blames Jacob for it. And she would be right to do so. While he didn't know he was delivering a virus, Jacob was aware that he was delivering something suspicious to Europa. He was just pretending he didn't know. Willful ignorance. Anyways, Jacob eventually meets up with Ferris again, who has mutated thanks to the biophage infection. After escaping from Ferris, Danny is then infected and Jacob must find a way to cure her. As they make their way back into the prison, they see that the prison is enveloped in this large mass of crap, and deduce that they need to go to the tower where the warden should be. But in a stroke of very bad luck, they come across two security bots and are instantly knocked out. Jacob is taken back to his original cell while Danny is taken to the prison's medical worker, Dr. Caitlin Mahler. She releases him from his cell and has him come to the old psychiatric ward where she and Danny are waiting for him. Once he gets there, he learns that the entire prison was built around the psych ward in order to conduct human experimentation with the biophages. The good doctor hands Jacob a syringe with the cure for Danny, but tells him that he needs to get the DNA from the alpha biophage before it can be completed. As Jacob starts to ask questions, she explains to him that the whole reason why Warden Cole was doing all this is because he believes that biophages are the next step in human evolution. Because of course he does. All of this was done to recreate Subject Zero, the first person ever bonded to a biophage without losing their sanity. And if I'm completely honest, this sounds like they're trying to create their own version of Venom. Jacob leaves the psych ward to go confront Warden Cole and figure out where the alpha biophage is. who is revealed to be none other than Captain Leon Ferris. So the two fight it out one last time, with Captain Leon Ferris transforming into a behemoth. After a long battle, Jacob finally puts down Ferris for good, managing to get the DNA he needed to finish the cure. This is when Warden Cole shows up again to ask Jacob to hand over the syringe so they can further their experiments. Danny is not having none of that and tries to kill him, but it turns out he's not even there. It's a hologram, which begs the question, if he wanted Jacob to hand over the syringe, who the hell was going to get it? No one was on there to grab it. I guess he could have asked Jacob to bring it with him in that escape pod that was going to go who knows where, but after Jacob realized that he set off the virus in Europa, I don't even think he would have gone for that. Jacob cures Danny of the infection, and Warden Cole decides to blow up the entire prison just to, protect his secrets, as you normally would do, leaving them with the escape pod to get out, but it only has room for one person, so Jacob sends Danny on her way while he fights off a wave of biophages. However, this is not where the story ends. 6 months after the release of the game, the Final Transmission DLC dropped that continued Jacob's story, and all that happened is that after Jacob sent Danny away, he was damn near killed by a biophase that may have been Ferris. Mahler then uses Jacob's Neuralink and sends more information about the prison to Danny. Jacob, in the meantime, is just hallucinating throughout the entire DLC while Mahler finishes the Final Transmission. Then she and Jacob both die, and that's the end of the entire Callisto Protocol story. And I mean, if I'm honest, it's not that bad. I think it's pretty good. It's not like groundbreaking. It didn't have a lot of plot twists, which I'm thankful for. A lot of games now are trying to have way too many plot twists to be interesting. Now, the gameplay was a little bit more impressive. If you've played Dead Space, then you'll feel right at home. This game oozes influence from the franchise, especially with how combat is handled. Dead Space is a third-person shooter where you fight alien monsters, stomping them into pieces in hopes of finding more ammo, health, and nodes to upgrade Isaac's arsenal. The Callisto Protocol is a third-person shooter where you fight human monsters, stomping them into pieces in hopes of finding more ammo, health, and Callisto points to upgrade Jacob's arsenal. The influence is obvious, but the Callisto Protocol, it really doesn't have any weapon variety. There are 5 guns. The 2 handguns are the hand cannon and the tactical pistol. The 2 shotguns are the skunk gun and the riot gun, and then there's 1 assault rifle. What's messed up is that the game doesn't really give you an incentive to use any of these guns other than the 2 guns that it provides you, the hand cannon and the riot gun. The skunk gun shows up early, but it's quickly outclassed by the riot gun. The tactical pistol, while it does shoot faster, doesn't hit as hard as the hand cannon by the time you get it, and it shows up in the middle of the game. By that time, the hand cannon should be almost fully leveled, and the tactical pistol is worthless. The assault rifle doesn't show up till the end of the game, and by the time that happens, you don't have enough resources to upgrade it to make a difference. What's really funny is that this game will punish you if you decide to craft the other 3 guns on your first playthrough. You see, enemies dropped ammo based on whatever gun is crafted, so if you have all 5 guns crafted, they're going to be dropping ammo for all 5 of those guns, and you only have 12 inventory slots. You can see how this is going to be a problem. You have to juggle all the ammo, juggle all the resources, and juggle all the healing items in 12 inventory slots. And on your first playthrough, when you don't know what you're doing, it's impossible. With that said, if you have the inclination to play this game after watching this video, here's a word of advice. Do not craft any guns. Just use the hand cannon and the riot gun. If you want to use the other guns, do it on a New Game Plus run. Now, melee combat is fun, but also boring at the same time. So Jacob can dodge any oncoming attack, and I mean he can dodge any of them. And when an enemy misses, this gives Jacob the opportunity to whiff punish him with his own melee attacks, followed up with some shots from his currently equipped gun. I found that this made combat more interesting than Dead Space's, but again, like I said, it gets kind of boring. It's repetitive. You'll have an enemy swing at you maybe 2 to 3 times. You dodge, you swing back, you shoot him. If it doesn't kill him instantly, you just rinse and repeat. And I can understand why it's this simple. I mean, it's a survival horror game. This is not Tekken. I don't need to juggle my enemies halfway across the map just to kill them, but there's also nothing extra to make it doesn't really hold my attention like a God of War game would. Now, the funny thing about this game that I've realized is that Jacob has a device called the Gravity Restraint Projector, or the GRIP, which essentially is Dead Space's kinesis. You can use it to pull and throw enemies and objects, and that's really all it's good for. There is no out-of-combat use for puzzles or anything else. There also isn't a stasis ability like in Dead Space, which was weird to me because during your first encounter with the GRIP, it was used to hold Jacob in place, and for running a prison, it's pretty useful. It's a pretty useful thing to have, so I'm not sure why we can't use it like that in the game. But I just think there should have been something more done to the guns in this game. And I know that these guns have alternate firing modes, but you don't really get them until the end of the game when you max out the gun, and by that time, you don't care. Now, this is not a long game. If you know what you're doing, you can beat the game in about 5 to 6 hours. The Final Transmission DLC is about another hour. So, what do you do once you beat the game? Well, the funny thing is, when it first came out, there was nothing to do. There was no new game plus, so once you beat it, that was it. But since the game's released in December of 2022, they now have a new game plus mode. They have a contagion mode, which is just the game on the hardest difficulty. And they also have riot mode, which is their horde mode. And of course, there's the Final Transmission DLC. At the end of the day, I do think this is a pretty decent game. It's not a great game, but it's nowhere near being a bad game as some people like to believe that it is. Now, I understand where some of their complaints come from, especially when it first dropped, because it was not without its technical issues. I couldn't get consistent frame rates at all, and I was running with a i9-12900K and a 2070 Super at the time. On top of that, the game was $60, which I guess today for the modern gamer is a hard ask for a brand new IP they know nothing about. I didn't really mind. I paid $80 for the game in its season pass because I was confident I was going to like it, and I did. I wasn't wrong. But that's going to be it for the Callisto Protocol. Again, a pretty good game that I hope Krafton and Striking Distance don't give up on. I know they have a game called Redacted that takes place in the same universe. I don't know what that's about or if it even follows the story, but I'm going to have to play that pretty soon and see where that ends up. I would love to see at least 2 more games for this IP, but that's neither here nor there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a comment down below, leave a like, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in the next one.